Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, and we'll be on podcasts everywhere, including Apple Podcasts and talklawradio.com, where you can search for other episodes regarding all kinds of different areas of practice, including real estate and estate planning, trusts, patent and trademark law, immigration, you name it. I like to bring on another attorney sometimes who will talk about their focus, which might not be my focus. I also like to bring on pastors to talk about what the gospel says about a particular area of law. But today we're talking with Diana Nelson-Pedraza about real estate. She gave us a market update, and now we're going to talk about her top 10 negotiating tips. What's number one?
How property is priced.
Okay,
That is huge.
That might be an appraisal.
Well, to start the ball rolling, you've got to put a price on it.
Mm-hmm.
And
before you even get the appraisal, you just have to pick a number.
To list the house. You've got to come up with a number, and you get with your agent, you do your research, we give you a market analysis and kind of give you a reference point, but you still pick the number. And some people get a little excited because they think their house is worth this because, it was estimates. They see those.
Right.
Not always the most reliable source. But you have to pick your price. And your price absolutely will dictate how fast it's going to move. Because in the end, something is worth only what someone is willing and capable of paying.
Right. That's what the IRS defines fair market value as, what a willing buyer will pay a willing seller given the same information.
So when you price your property, it does set the tone for how fast it's going to move. Some people approach it as you set it low, the market will correct the value. And it will raise it to what somebody is willing and capable of paying.
So if you have multiple buyers, then
it's going to rise up. Somebody's going to pay what they want for it.
Right.
The next tip is the motivation of both buyers and sellers.
Sometimes it's money.
Well, some people, they want that house because of the pool. They want that house because they got stuck in an apartment during quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
They don't ever want to be trapped that way again.
Right.
So they want a house a room for every child, a spare room for their office. They want a pool in the backyard. That's the motivation of the buyer.
Sounds good to me.
But if you have that house, do you really want to sell it? Well, you'll sell it for the right price.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that, the motivation of both parties.
Right. The seller might be motivated to wait a long time to try and get the most money, or if they need the money right now, they might take less.
Yes.
Okay. What's next?
The next one is days on the market, and I call this the marination process.
Just like a steak.
It's just like a steak. So what happens is the seller is tenderized by this process.
If they have a hard line to begin with.
Yeah. So if I have a buyer that's like, well, I like that house, but I'm not going to pay that much for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then don't and wait.
Mm-hmm.
If it's still on the market in 3 weeks, well, chances are you're going to be able to come in a little less, maybe negotiate some closing cost. But it's hard to do that on the first day of the market.
Right, you have to wait. Time tenderizes.
Yes, because if you're a listing agent, you're not going to tell your seller, well, take that offer $10,000 less.
Mm-hmm. And that would be your perspective if you were representing that seller.
Correct.
Give them some time. Maybe the buyer really wants it,
Mm-hmm.
and after some time, their desire for the property will also grow.
And it goes back to the motivation of both the buyer and the seller.
Mm-hmm.
Who is more motivated.
Right.
So I always tell people the first 10 days, don't panic.
On both sides.
On both sides. Like if you see a house and you really want it, but you don't want to pay that much for it, well, then just hold on. If it's gone, it's gone. Are you willing to risk that?
Yeah.
And set that expectation that if you want it that bad, you may have to pay that.
Well, I've seen it before where a buyer that pays too much for their house, they can never leave. They don't have discretionary spending. They just have to stay home, and they can't go to concerts or cookouts.
They're house poor. They're house poor. The next thing to know would be, what do you have to lose? And again, it goes back to that motivation. Whether you're negotiating repairs on the buyer side or the seller side, what do you have to lose? I mean, I get told no all the time, and it has not killed me yet. So I swing for the fences with my buyers and asking for repairs.
You start with, well, this is what the inspector says is wrong, so you need to repair the whole list.
Well, why not? I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Right.
And, the listing agent goes back and talks to the seller. Depending on their counsel, they come back and they're either, they're not doing anything, or, well, we'll do half of it, or we'll give you a concession for it. And then the negotiating process starts. But if you don't swing for the fences, you're never going to hit a home run.
That's right.
So I do, when I'm representing buyers, I do try for the big one.
You said that you've been told no a lot. Well, the statistic for Babe Ruth is that he also had the most strikeouts.
Yeah, because he was swinging for the fences.
Right. Okay, before you hit that number 5, I wanted to remind everybody, this is Talk Law Radio. We're discussing the hidden legal issue blind spot of real estate. Now, even if you've bought or sold real estate in the past, we all know that the markets change, the mortgage rates change, and people change. And so it might be a good idea to hire a realtor. And so we've been talking about 10 negotiating tips with Diana Nelson-Pedraza with RE/MAX North San Antonio. Okay, let's continue. Number 5.
So number 5 is you have to know where your deal breakers are. And that's basically, I caution against the painting in the corner, but I still need to know, really, what will you not do? For sellers, sometimes it's a net. I have to get this. So as long as, you need to walk away with $300,000 and our net right now is $310,000, well, that gives me $10,000 to negotiate with. As for buyers, when we get that inspection report and they go over it, it's like, where is the deal breaker? Like, if they refuse to budge on this issue, are you going to terminate? So you have to know that before we go into it.
Right.
And then we don't say absolutely, but it gives me a line to kind of get up next to.
Right.
And I try and negotiate within that.
Right. Okay, what's number 6?
So I think that it's very important for an agent to be able to read another agent. You have to know who you're going to be working with, because our job is to get the transaction done.
Where did you learn this skill? hard to pinpoint.
I played chess with my brother when I was growing up.
Oh, okay.
That's what it was. You have to know your opponent.
I like that.
And I hate looking at agents as opponents, but they are the ones I'm negotiating with. So I do, I talk to them. And depending on how tight the negotiating is, I'll research them. What's their production?
Wow.
How often do they give seller concessions? How often do they do price reductions? Because it gives me fuel to negotiate.
Okay, so I think this is a good time to talk about your duty as the realtor. Tell us about that.
So we have a fiduciary duty to our client, and that is that the client's interest comes before ours and everyone else's. If I have a car payment that doesn't mean somebody has to buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
At no time do you have to buy a house. Like, if you start to feel uncomfortable and you're not under contract, you should not be forced to jump into something if it doesn't work for you.
Right.
But there are people that feel like they have to buy it because they've been looking for 6 months, and the agent isn't going to get paid.
Well, fiduciary duty means best interest, right? And so if you feel like that it's not going to be in their best interest, then you give them some more advice.
Mm-hmm. I told one client that they were apologizing because we had looked at 5 houses. And they were like, we hate to be wasting your time. And I told them my house payment is not contingent on you buying a house. And if it ever gets to that point, I'll go to work for HEB, someplace like that. I'm never going to put a client in that corner.
Awesome. Love it. You've been here with us on Talk Law Radio. We're going to take one more break, and when we come back, we'll finish our top 10 list of negotiating tips. So stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.